Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Heretic Hunter, a character I wanted to take a look at for quite some time. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first half of the video, and in the second half of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else. So what this character is going to be about is we're going to play as a non-stealth archer build. So as I mentioned, I wanted to take a look at this for quite some time, and the main reason here is that ever since bows basically became a thing in Fallout 76, and therefore archery and the whole archer perks, the overarching detriment about these kind of builds was that the main problem of the bow was it's slow. So therefore, yeah, people, if at all, were basically using these kind of builds as stealth builds. And while I completely agree that this is obviously the best way to go about things, even then the bow will hardly be the best weapon in the game. I still wanted to see if it's an enjoyable experience, and to my surprise, I found out that I actually had a ton of fun and didn't even feel too powerless. So overall, it was coming up to be quite a good build. Yeah, as I said, I'm generally surprised, and I will talk about some things I tried that didn't really work out all that well, and some things that worked out surprisingly well. So the first big thing is speed. As you probably, well, you can't really see it, but yeah, the thing I wanted to talk about first is the weapon of choice here, which is still a standard bow. So what I wanted to go with is, yeah, I wanted to use the compound bow, as it's generally considered to be the better bow, just because it has more base damage and pretty much, yeah, since the weapon is slow and therefore, yeah, its big strength is just that it is hard hitting. People tend to believe that the compound bow that hits even a little bit harder seems to be better. Now, looking at both of them, they do have a fire rate of 100 in their stats. So overall, yeah, you would believe that pretty much the only changes. I think the compound bow is a little more heavy, and well, okay, on this occasion we do have some tiny possums here, not too much of a challenge. Um, it's a bit more heavy, has a little bit more accuracy if modded out correctly, and a bit more base damage, but the fire rate seems to be the same, 100, as I said. But really, from my testing, especially in third person, it seems like the usual bow has quite some more fire rate. As I said, it's a bit odd because it's not really reflected in its stats, but um, really, well, we can take a look at it quite closely here. So here you can see how fast I can shoot it, and this one here is a compound bow. And while it seems pretty fast, it has one big downside. In third person, it's completely bugged. Like, it doesn't really hit most of the time, and as you can see there, some of the arrows just go down immediately. And once we're going into first person, we will see the fire rate relatively slow here. And once it comes to the standard bow, it's a bit faster. Now, it's a bit hard to make out. It generally doesn't look like it's a lot faster, but really, once you're playing with it, it for me it's kind of obvious. It really feels like it's faster. I may be wrong here, but anyways, the sheer fact that in third person the compound bow seems to lose hits all of the time, and sometimes straight up doesn't work, makes it so, yeah, I went with the standard bow here. So that already was a lot of talk about just my general use of weapon here, which is the bow itself. But yeah, anyways, we're not losing out too much here either way. It's just a little bit of damage. It's not too crazy. Now, another big factor here was which kind of modifications I wanted to go with. And, wow, this here works great. Okay. We got some hits in, but as usual, we gotta wait till the guy lands, really, or is in range. Now, the weapon has a really good range, but when it comes to Scorch Beasts, they still can get out of range pretty easily. But as you can see here, once it's in range, it's really not that big of a problem. Furthermore, we are on the ground now, so we should see some benefit from the explosive arrows here. And yeah, that's what I wanted to mention next. The modification of choice, which I went with explosive arrows here. But actually, you can't really go too wrong. But if anything, I would go for either ultrasight arrows or the explosive ones. Now, in my last video where I was using a bow, I was using ultrasight arrows. Now, the obvious disadvantage at first would be that ultrasight arrows are kind of hard to get just because you need flux in addition to other materials rather than just aluminum and duct tape. No, sorry, duct tape. Adhesive. I think a little bit of wood either. But really, it ultimately doesn't really make too much of a difference for the simple reason that I found myself just generally farm arrows in daily ops, no matter if it's ultrasight or standard arrows. So getting ammo really, yeah, there's no real bad choice to pick here. They're all pretty much similar when it comes to. Okay, this is a bit weird here. I had this before, but okay, we just want to aggro this guy anyways and use vats here. Yeah, so I went with explosive arrows, and the simple reason here was pretty much, first of all, aesthetic choices. It feels kind of Rambo-y to do it like that, going loud and proud and just shoot everything with explosive arrows. Just was a lot of fun. And the other thing here is, since if there's any real weakness to this build, it's definitely groups of enemies. So if you're basically swarmed by a horde of ghouls or anything, yeah, the explosive part really helps you. It doesn't seem like that at first, but really, if you're fighting like more than 5 enemies at the same time, by the time you're fighting the 5th one, you're basically starting to kill enemies just from splash damage, which is really nice. And that's something you don't really have with the ultrasight arrows. Now, overall, the ultrasight arrows would do a little more damage, I guess, just for the simple reason that yeah, you're not doing explosive damage, but just get a boost to your base damage. And that guy here is a little bit of a concern, so we're trying to take out his legs, which makes them way less of a threat. And yeah, getting around the corner so we can avoid his death laser. For once I really thought about this guy and he was actually there, so that's a nice change of pace here. And Gutsies, they are, as always, pretty brutal enemies, so since they have quite high DPS, they can be a little bit of a pain in the ass here. But other than that, you want to stay on the move, and that's basically the whole point of this build here, trying to avoid damage just by always being on the move. Hardly anything completely new. I do this on a lot of characters, especially once I'm not sneaking and not in power armor. But yeah, you are a bit tanky, relatively tanky for an archer at least, but still you want to keep your distance to enemies and fight them over range, and in addition to that, be on the move. So that really makes it so most of the enemies, if anything, get a little bit of a hit on you, but that's it. And yeah, the fire rate really isn't too bad here. Now, one thing to consider is that while you have to reload every single shot, that stays the same. That's everything you have to do. You don't, at a certain point, have to reload a new clip. So compared to, for example, a hunting rifle, which is pretty much comparable in terms of fire rate, if not slower. But in addition to that, you then have to factor in a reload after like 5 shots. So yeah, overall, I think this is the better version of the hunting rifle, basically. So, and on top of that, you're an archer, which is something I always wanted to have as an ability in Fallout. It's just kind of cool, I guess. And yeah, you probably won't see a lot of people use archery. Like, I can't encounter seeing a single person doing it in all of my time playing Fallout 76, like when I was attending events or something. I never saw someone use a bow other than maybe some low-level players. Now, especially at low levels, the bow can still be a relatively good option, just because it has high base damage. But yeah, as you saw there, over that range, 2 easy hits. Now, in terms of effects, this bow really is suboptimal. I would definitely have better options in mind here. And to be more precise, the first approach I wanted to go for, now on this occasion we had a little bit of buck damage here, but that doesn't happen too often. On my first approach, I was using the bow I was using in my latest video at all. Sorry. Also, which is an instigating version with better vats crits and faster vats crits. And my approach was to go for a crit on every second shot, meaning that overall our damage was great. We had a lot of safe hits, so oftentimes I was just focusing on the torso for the first shot, getting a safe hit in, and then following with a 100% certain hit from a critical afterwards, which turned out really nice, did work quite well, but I just didn't want to do it for the simple sake of not repeating myself in terms of weaponry. So I re-rolled the weapon a few times, maybe like 5 times or so, and what I ended up with here is a juggernauts version with the inertial effect, meaning that we do get our we do get a little bit of AP back on a kill in vats, not in vats, generally. And in addition to that, we do have less vats cost as an effect. So yeah, this is really a vat-centered weapon. Now the first effect, which is, as I said, juggernauts, isn't too crazy. And sorry, by the way, oh yeah, okay. This could have been a pretty great weapon, but being just a 1-star weapon, it's not too crazy. But still, an anti-armor combat shotgun is, in my opinion, one of the better shotguns you can get. Back to the topic. Juggernauts really isn't the best perk here, for the simple reason that, it just works on the first 5, so from 100 to 95% health, as far as I remember, which isn't a lot, and you certainly get under that threshold pretty fast, just by virtue of being shot all the time. Now, it's not hard to stay alive with this build, but keeping your health up 100% down to maybe 95 is really hard unless you're using stealth. And overall, it still doesn't add too much damage. So my perfect kind of pick here would probably be something like anti-armor, vats hit chance, less vats cost. If I wasn't going for like 23 luck and using the faster vats crits effect to get more crits. But really, it doesn't feel too necessary here. So overall, I think we were doing relatively great. And this here is exactly the kind of situation where this build really shines. In wide open areas where you have quite a lot of cover and can take enemies from distance. So as you saw there, for the most part, we were also at full health. So we were getting that little bit of damage boost. And yeah, not a good, no, not good legendary weapon, but at least it's very good script value just because, 3-star weapon with very little weight. What does this weigh? Maybe 0.13 pounds or something like that. Good for script value. And sadly, we didn't really get a gun food chain here, but as you saw there, I mean, Deathclaws hardly are the big threat that they once were. Seen a very good video about it from Tonic, by the way. Just uploaded it like 2 days ago or so, about why Deathclaws aren't the big threat they were anymore, but not exactly the topic of the video here. Really, as you can see, I'm just running out of things I want to mention about this build, just because I just wanted to show off that I think the bow is a pretty viable weapon even outside of stealth. I mean, obviously it's not a queen killer, but as always, I don't think weapons have to be precisely. I find it quite okay that there's only a limited amount of weapons and effect combinations that make you solo the endgame bosses. I mean, I would hate if there wasn't an option to do so, but really, yeah, if you want to min-max so much that you can do these kind of things, kill colossal, finish the colossal problem on your own or so, you're on the wrong channel anyways. But I think you know that. Um, Other than that, for day-to-day combat and even for a lot of the daily ops operations and yeah, a lot of the quests and everything, you're really not doing too bad with this build here. It might be a little bit challenging, but certainly there aren't points where you feel underpowered. Really, you can pretty much finish every single bit of content other than the end game bosses. You also are pretty good in events, actually, just because you have such a high range and relatively good accuracy. So if you just want to go for torso shots, you can actually tag enemies pretty easily. Think about stuff like Line in the Sand or Radiation Rumble. I really had a good time farming there, and yeah. As always, it's kind of nice to see people's reactions if you rock up there with some extravagant weapons. Now, one thing I wanted to mention here is at the earlier stage of using this build, I was tempted to transfer it over to my main character, which has the Secret Service armor with the jetpack, because I thought that that could be quite a cool combination. Using the jetpack to fly around and basically do trick shots with the weapon. And I did that. It actually worked out relatively well, but I didn't want to go overkill on AP usage. That's the main problem here. There was just a whole new factor of managing your AP there, and it didn't really add to the overall combat. It was nice for some trick shots here and there, certainly, but I didn't really feel like it added a lot to the general gameplay and made me more powerful. Like basic jumps, jumping around the terrain and repositioning yourself is more than enough in pretty much every single situation here. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it in terms of the gameplay part of the video. And now we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, and everything. So I'm really glad you watched the video up to this point here. And now stay tuned for more. So here it is. We're starting off with our mutations. So pretty standard stuff for a vats build here. We have bird bones, eagle eyes, egghead, herbivore, marsupial, and speed demon. So the important ones here are bird bones, eagle eyes, marsupial, and speed demon. Bird bones for extra agility, meaning more action points to use in vats. Eagle eyes, extra perception for more vats hit chance and better crit damage is also nice from better crit damage, obviously. Then we do have marsupial and speed demon. Those are extremely important, just because there's not speed demon. There's nothing else you can do in order to increase your reload speed on a weapon. There's no faster reload speed as the legendary effect for the weapon anymore. I think there are some legacies floating around, but as far as I'm aware, they don't really do anything. And in addition to that, you don't have any perk. Now I could be wrong. I think now that I'm thinking about it, that speed demon doesn't affect the reload speed either. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. I didn't really check that here. But anyways, just for the faster movement speed, we want to have this mutation at all. And next to that, we have marsupial, just the jump height. Pretty important on this character. Now it's always there on every single character I do have, but on this one especially, I'm utilizing it a lot during combat. And lastly, we do have herbivore and egghead. These are just passive buffs to us that we don't really didn't really utilize in this video here. Now the debuffs from egghead are just to strength and endurance, which makes us a little less tanky, but overall, that's basically it. And herbivore, well, it's pretty nice if you want to use something like blight soup or want to increase your AP refresh with corn soup or other stuff like that. There's a lot of teas that really improve your perception or your agility. So there's a lot you can do with herbivore stuff with vegetarian diet that helps a vet's build. So basically everything that boosts your agility, crit damage, or perception is always nice. And in addition to that, everything that boosts your AP refresh. Going over to our equipment, here we have it, an explosive, juggernauts, inertial, less vats cost bow. We do have the Flatwoods Fletcher style skin on it. There was a very cool skin way back in time that I would love to have here, which was basically Mothman themed, as far as I remember. But for the life of me, it doesn't come back to the item shop. Would have loved it for this build. Basically, that's the whole reason why I was waiting so long, but I kind of gave up on it. And other than that, yeah, we do have iron sights. They slightly increase our accuracy with the weapon. As you can see down there, we do have an accuracy stat of 56. I think a bare bones bow has something along the lines of 49 or so, but don't quote me on that. It's not too crazy, honestly. I think though that it does decrease the amount of action points that we do use. Then we do have explosive arrows. I already mentioned those earlier, and they do quite a bit of extra damage. I think without them we were somewhere at around 180 damage. But yeah, it's hardly the world. As I said earlier, ultrasight damage is ultrasight arrows are probably the better option. Where you really will see the difference is once you're going against Scorch Beast, obviously. But I found that the explosive arrows really add a lot in situations where you are crowded or deal with multiple enemies. Oftentimes, the explosive damage, splash damage, is so little that you'll basically see no effect of it in those situations. But since the base damage of the weapon is so high, that means that the explosive damage part of the weapon, the splash damage, actually does enough to kill level 60 ghouls, for example, with 2 to 3 hits sometimes. So that's really nice to have here, and also factors in quite or syncs in quite nicely with our legendary perk Far-Flung Fireworks. So pretty much that's it about the weapon. One thing to mention is that its condition isn't the greatest, but it's not too bad either. By the way, we started with, I'm pretty sure, 1,060 arrows or so. So overall, we burned through 260, something along those lines. So really, it isn't too bad. And yeah, after an hour of farming, I was up to like 3,000 arrows. I was farming with communists, I think, volatile communists or something like that. So one of the easier daily ops, obviously, but still was really easy to farm a lot of arrows there. And keep in mind, I was also farming ultrasight arrows, which were also at 1,000 or so. And yeah, overall, as I said, Juggernauts not the best bow in the world. Um, Maybe just an anti-armor version of this weapon, except for Juggernauts, would also be pretty cool. But overall, I probably wouldn't be too keen on inertial again either. It's just not a good perk in my opinion. It obviously sinks in very well with less vats cost, but it just does too little to be too crazy. I think overall you'd probably see more benefit from better vets hit chance, just because you're needing less shots overall, and therefore spare more action points than you will ever get from inertial. But yeah, neither here nor there. So overall, as you can see, a lot of improvement for the weapon that's possible here. I just want to get this build over here. Then we do have a set of Vanguard's AP Refresh Combat Armor. For those of you who follow the channel, you probably know this armor here. The only difference here is one weightless piece with AP Refresh. Now, I mentioned it in the past, 5 pieces of AP Refresh are probably overkill. Like, the most benefit you'll see from the first 3 pieces. Everything after that isn't really necessary, so you could go for either extra perception or agility or anything, but yeah, I just wanted to have this full set here, and um, it's all heavy except for one arm, which is sturdy, I think. So overall, the resistances are pretty great here. Either we have an incentive to keep our health high, as we have the Juggernauts effect. So yeah, we keep our health up with stim packs, and at the beginning of a battle encounter, we are also pretty tanky and do quite a lot of damage. So that syncs together pretty well also. In terms of equipment, so apparel, We do have the chemist backpack. It's this here crypt backpack, crypt crook skin, which works kind of well with the Mothman theme we're going for here, the Mothman cultist. Obviously, you do have a dedicated skin, backpack skin for that, with the little Mothman plushie, but I think it doesn't always work too well, and on this occasion, I think something like this here gravestone worked way better. Then we do have Pastor's Vestments. I always loved combining those with the cultist mask, the ritual mask. They seem to work together so well. I mean, we're kind of looking at the wrong direction here, but yeah, they really add a lot to the character, I think. And lastly, we do have shielded road ladders. Now you could also go for shielded long johns, harness, or raider ladders. I really just wanted to have extra perception and agility. Also, the extra luck doesn't hurt. However, it ultimately doesn't add too much to our character anyways, since we do have a lot of base luck anyways. But yeah, extra perception and agility, as always, is nice. And yeah, that was it in terms of our equipment. And lastly, we're going to take a look at our perks. So Bandolier at rank 2, very obvious here. Arrows, ultrasight arrows, crossbow bolts, all of these together have one big problem, which is that they are quite heavy. Now, you could argue that you're not carrying as much as you would probably for 45 bullets or something like that, but still, if you want to run a dedicated archer, I don't see it as unlikely that you will end up carrying around something like 3 to 5,000 arrows. So yeah, really weighing them down bringing their weight down with bandolier is quite detrimental to the character, in my opinion. Then we do have perception, arguably the most interesting perk here. Uh, sorry, the most interesting stat here, just because it hosts all of our damage perks. So Archer, Master, and Expert Archer all maxed out for basically best damage output. Then we do have Bow before me, which is basically the equivalent of Tank Killer for bows. So I kind of felt it unnecessary that there was an extra perk for it, just because it doesn't do anything different. If anything, I would like a bit more armor penetration or a way higher stagger chance, maybe a cripple chance baked in, just because yeah, the weapons do have downsides compared to rifles and automatic rifles. So it's a bit of a shame that bow before me is basically the exact same perk as tank killer for bows, but still it's extra armor penetration, which means more damage in a lot of situations, and a little stagger chance, which, as far as I'm concerned, seems to also work for the explosive part of the damage. So in group situations, that can actually help. Then we do have rank 1 of Concentrated Fire. Now, ideally, I would have liked higher ranks because they would be very beneficial on this weapon, but ultimately I decided to go for rank 1 so I can use rank 2 of Grenadier here, which should boost the explosive range of our arrows. Uh, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I didn't really bother to test it out, but you will see that we have far-flung fireworks, and I'm pretty sure, at least for that perk, Grenadier should affect it. So yeah, really didn't want to live without it. It just helps in group situations, which are otherwise our big downside. Then we go over to endurance, which is relatively high for an archer. As I said in the beginning, you will basically always see people use archers at stealth. So endurance will be the dump stat just because you're avoiding damage overall. And yeah, on this occasion I went with fireproof adamantium skeleton. So these two are very straightforward. Always good picks here, unless you're in power armor, where adamantium skeleton would be unnecessary. But other than that, yeah, not being crippled and taking very, very much less damage from explosions, which includes the screams of Scorch Beast, exploding cars, super mutant suiciders, and so on. That's a good thing, definitely. And lastly, we do have photosynthetic. To be honest, you can go with whatever you like here, since you do tend to take damage every now and then. You could also argue that Cola Nut wouldn't be a bad decision, just to give you another cheap alternative to Stimpaks. But in my opinion, photosynthetic was quite nice, giving us a little bit of health regen over the day. And overall, yeah, we do have two more endurance. Basically, this offsets our negative from the Eagle Eyes mutation. And going over, we do have Charisma at rank 3, also pretty common on my builds. Tenderizer here, 10% multiplicative damage after the first hit. Now, on some or on a lot of uh, archers, I would think that Tenderizer could be you could live without it, just because you're trying to kill enemies with a single hit from stealth attacks. But on this occasion, you're actually using the bow more in a vein of an automatic weapon. Therefore, Tenderizer is really beneficial, especially once you're fighting stuff like behemoths and so on. Then we do have intelligence, demo expert for an ever so slight boost at our explosive damage. We really don't talk about a crazy amount here. Let's just take a look here. We do have 211 damage without it, and with demo expert we do have 229. So it's hardly the world, but still it's a little bit of a damage boost. And as I said earlier, um, for once we're really trying to make use out of the explosive effect, not only for adding damage to our single target, but really trying to make use out of the splash damage. So boosting it even a little bit is nice to have. Then we do have first aid. As I mentioned, we are constantly in danger, constantly being shot at. So overall, using stim packs is definitely a part of this build, and therefore, yeah, boosting their efficiency is a nice thing to have. Now, obviously, if you find yourself in a situation where you have a ton of stim packs, this might not be necessary. After all, stim packs can be quite plentiful for a lot of people. So what I would go with is actually Nerd Rage, just to have a little bit of a safety net, as I often call it. Or if you have so many of these stim packs, maybe go for something else entirely. But to be honest, the best idea would probably be to go for rank 3 of Gunsmith or so, just to decrease the amount of damage your condition loss that your bow is taking. Then we go over to agility. We have Action Boy here for obvious reasons. Now it could be overkill just because of the amount of powered pieces that we have as armor, but still, I always like to have Action Boy here just in case. So yeah, faster AP refresh, never a bad decision. Then we do have White Knight. I just always like it on characters that are non-stealth, not in power armor. I really think repairing armor is one of the most tedious things in Fallout 76, and reducing the amount of time you have to do it, and reducing the amount of resources you have to put in if you have to do it, is a nice thing, in my opinion. Then we do have Adrenaline, very obvious pick here, since we're trying to get the last bit of damage out of our bow here, just to yeah, just to be more viable. More damage in group situations is a very nice thing, especially if since it kicks in situations where usually we are weaker due to the way our weapon works. So in tougher groups, it really means that once we have our 5 kills, we really start to get uh, to one-shot ghouls and so on. So that's a nice thing to have. Then we do have rank 1 of Ganfu. Obviously, higher ranks could be cool, but it's just not the biggest benefit, so it's justified to use just rank 1 here, just so we can switch targets after, automatically after killing an enemy in vats. And lastly, we do have Evasive. Now, this is where, if you want to have higher ranks of Ganfu, you could put this in. Now, on first hand, Evasive doesn't seem like it's too good of a benefit, since we are already over the point of diminishing returns when it comes to our armor. But keep in mind, we do have a lot of it from Vanguard's effect. So if we are losing health, like let's say we're at 70% health or so, we really start to see less and less benefit from our Vanguard's effect, and would go under the point of diminishing returns, and therefore get even faster damage. So Evasive just makes it so we have a little bit more um, have a little bit more damage resistance and energy resistance going on overall, and that's just a nice thing to have, in my opinion. Now, it's not necessary. You could even get away with dodgy, just because you do have a lot of AP and refresh it very fast. So you could live with it. I still don't like it too much. If you find yourself having a lot of stim packs, what I did for a while was going with rank 3 of Born Survivor. It just made me way less careless. Made it so even during fights, I often ended up with getting a benefit from the Juggernauts effect again and so on. But as I mentioned earlier, I hardly would go for the juggernauts effect if I was using this build for a longer time. So I would go for anti-armor or so, where, yeah, Born Survivor would at that point just be beneficial in order to keep us alive, which I just didn't find too troublesome to begin with. And then we do have luck at 15, so we do have Bloody Mess here, we do have Grim Reaper Sprint, better criticals, class 3 at rank 1, just because due to storage genes, which we have to take. We had 1 point left in luck if we want to max it out, which I wanted to do, and therefore, yeah, class 3 get rank 1, just to reduce the debuff to our endurance a little bit. And lastly, critical savvy. So critical savvy, better criticals. This is a very prominent combination here. Just so on every third hit in vats, we do get a crit, um, which will then do more damage. So that's a very potent combination. Um, Grim Reaper Sprint, further doubling down on inertial and less vats cost, so we can really stay in vats basically forever. Even though we could refresh our AP very easily, but you just don't want to run out of AP on this character, because shooting the bow outside of VATS is even another thing. I will tackle that in a single video, where I make a dedicated non-VATS Archer build, which will be probably the greatest challenge yet, but yeah, anyways. Maximizing our AP pool and really utilizing VATS all of the time was the key to this build, in my opinion, even with moving around a lot and therefore burning a lot of AP without even shooting the bow. Yeah, so really that was the big thing here. And lastly, we do have Bloody Mess. Now, this does add more damage than Demo Expert, so I was surprised at how beneficial this was. Yet again, we can look at it. Keep in mind, we do have 229 damage at the moment, and not using Bloody Mess, we do have 212. So overall, this is damage. I don't really want to do the calculation here, but it should be more than Demo Expert. Anyways, it's not the world, but a little bit of a damage buff here, and enemies can explode, which is nice. So yeah, other noteworthy picks here would be Four Leaf Clover or probably even Psychopath in this situation, but I just found that it didn't add too much here. I didn't want to rely too heavily on VATS crits after all. Really, the fact that you're getting consistent headshots in, that's probably the most beneficial part about this build. The crits are just added on top. And lastly, we do have our legendary perks. So the boring ones right out of the bat: 2 extra endurance from legendary endurance, 2 extra perception, 2 extra agility, and 5 extra luck. So as always, these are going to be utilized for 2 things. So perception and endurance gives me the ability to utilize more perks. Basically, Grenadier and photosynthetic on this occasion, so I can easily say that. And with legendary agility and luck, those are both maxed out to begin with, so we are at a base 15 luck and at a base 15 agility. These just added on top of that, so we can have a little bit more of the passive benefits, meaning a few more action points from agility and a bit faster VATS crits from legendary luck. And that leaves us with far-flung fireworks and what rats. What rats is just a convenience, but on this occasion it actually makes it a bit easier to maintain this 90 to 95% health for the Juggernauts effect, and also makes it so our Vanguard's armor is pretty much in perfect condition. The Vanguard's effect works perfectly once we're entering a encounter. So yeah, just keeps us red free, quite obviously. It's just rank 1, so it's not crazy enough so you can go through nuke zones or something, but still, it's nice to have. And far-flung fireworks, this really helps when you're fighting groups of ghouls, scourge, so on. If it explodes, it's kind of odd because a lot of the times it feels like it has no range whatsoever. So oftentimes you will see that enemies standing directly next to the one you're shooting, which then explodes, take no damage whatsoever from it. But on the other side, I just had situations where I was, how do I explain it? When you're doing the White Spring golf course, you know how on the basically on the field behind the apartments, there's this kind of hole in the ground where there's a broken pipe, and I was shooting an enemy on one side of that hole, which then exploded, and enemies on the other side of the whole level 75 ghouls just dropped dead. Um, I was using a crit, so I have no idea what that was going about, but I've seen things like that happen quite often. So sometimes far-flung fireworks does have a ton of range for no apparent reason. So yeah, it overall does benefit on this character specifically. So yeah, rank 2 of it, obviously higher ranks would be nice, but yeah, still kind of cool to have here. And yeah, that was it. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. This was the Heretic Hunter. Nope, we don't want to change its appearance. We just want to take a look at our photo gallery so we can take a look at our thumbnail for today. And yeah, as always, I hope you enjoyed it, guys, and see you next time with the next build. Possibly, I'm going for a little bit of a week with archery. I have two other ideas. I power armor a crossbow character, which is kind of stupid, but I really like it so far. And yeah, as I mentioned, I want to do a free aim um, bow build. That will obviously use stealth again, just because there's no way that with my aim I can pull it off to do it outside of stealth. But yeah, then I will also finally take a look at the compound bow. All evidence suggests points to it. But yeah, as always, if you have any ideas for any interesting builds, let me know. Maybe just a premise, maybe just a certain weapon you want to see. With custom worlds, I can pretty much make everything work. And yeah, see you next time, guys. Bye.